All right, massive guest on today. Hot topic: Geoghegan, winner of the Giro this year, mate. Welcome to the podcast. Really appreciate you coming on in what I imagine has been a super busy week for you.
Yeah, no worries, mate. I think I've been on before, haven't I? Have I not?
You've come on. You've done like a few. You did an Insta takeover for us in
Yeah,
Colombia last
I
year or
think
the
I
year
sent you a
before.
recording, but maybe I'm making it up. I
I
can't
can't remember. You
remember.
have to ask the big boss, Alex.
How's it going?
How's it been, mate? Like how's this week been? Like you won the Giro. What have you been doing this week?
Um, yeah, first and foremost, kind of got back home to Andorra and had to, yeah, drive back to the UK. It was a plan I'd made a couple months ago, so to come back with the car and stuff, just to have the flexibility with everything that's been going on. And obviously, I haven't been in the UK since like New Year's Day 2020. So it's been the best part of a year. Certainly felt like a year. And yeah, just been doing obviously quite a lot of media obligations and stuff, but also just seeing the family and sinking a few pints and all the normal stuff as well that you need to catch up on after the season. So no, it's been super nice.
Yeah. So this is going to be a quick one. You've obviously got a lot of things on. What I want to do is I want to touch just quickly, like, on how you started cycling and your past, like growing up in London. Like, how do you become a bike rider in such a big city like that? Like, what's the story?
Yeah, I mean, not very easily, to be honest. I think until this year, there was no other professional from London or even really from kind of the outskirts or suburbs of the city. Now there's two young guys that have come up through the outdoor velodrome that's down in South London in Herne Hill. So they've come through an amazing club that's based down there, which is actually one of the pretty much the first place I ever raced. But even that was like an hour and a bit ride across central London, like across Tower Bridge, past all the landmarks and stuff. So yeah, it wasn't easy. I think I would like to hope and think that it's a bit easier now. There's definitely a lot more sport cycling culture in the UK and even in London as well. There's a few more facilities as well that can kind of give a bit of a safer haven and pathway, if you will, for kids starting. But for me, I'd always ridden a lot of bikes. A lot of times growing up, my mum didn't have a car, so we like went around the city often on bikes and around our neighborhood and stuff. And then when I was about 14, I think it was, I kind of by chance discovered the sport. Really, I was getting really into like the kind of city side of riding. I would go out with mates on the weekend and we'd go all over London really and on bikes, exploring, I guess, for use of a better word. And then because I'd always been competitive, I'd always played sport at a really high level. At the time, I was still swimming competitively. And I don't know, I loved it. There was something that I really connected with about leaving London every time, kind of that you did your sport, as it were. But I think for me in the start, it wasn't really training. I was just riding my bike. I just enjoyed it. We'd go out into the countryside and get lost and find our way back and have an adventure along the way, as kids, and it was so different to every sport I'd ever done, because with football and swimming and athletics and everything, we never left London. There's obviously so many people here that we'd almost always just stay within the city. So it was totally different and yeah, unique, I think.
Did you know like about the Tour de France and the Giro? Were you like a cycling fan?
At that point, I started to discover it. Really, before that, I had no idea about the existence of cycling whatsoever. I'd imagine, I don't remember it, but I'd imagine looking back, I must have seen the Olympics, obviously like the track cycling, in 2008. Obviously, GB had the best Olympics ever by that point, especially with cycling. And then I think there was the odd kind of thing I'd seen, like the tour obviously started in 2007. So I was 12 at the time. I think I'd just kind of started to. It's hard when you look back because all these things kind of merge into one. But I think I just maybe was around the time where I was about to get my first road bike, something like that. I can remember something with clipless pedals where, like everyone, you're struggling, especially in the city with so many traffic lights and stuff. You get plenty of practice.
Yeah.
But it's weird looking back with all that stuff. Actually, I was just looking at an old email server this morning, trying to find an email, laughing with my mum over a cup of coffee, and I stumbled upon some other weird email that hadn't seen in years, like asking for sponsorship and stuff when I was a kid. So it's quite funny when you look back at some of that stuff.
Yeah. It's come a long way, mate. In such a short period of time. You still seem like a massive fan, like, of the sport. Like, do you see yourself still as a fan?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sport's still, like, I find it as interesting and as cool for the same reasons as when I was a kid, really, in terms of like the amazing places we get to go. It's led me to meet so many interesting and memorable people, and also close friends. And yeah, it's still surprising me all the time, really, being involved in cycling and getting to do the things that we do. So I think more so it's like just keeping that perspective and awareness of the privilege that you have, and how lucky that we are to be first and foremost professional sports people, and then as a young British guy and whatnot, and as a cyclist, I feel really privileged to be on my team, I think. So yeah, I think it's all about that matter of perspective, really. That's why it's nice to come back to London. Everyone's rushing off to work and primary school and secondary school and all the rest of it. And I can not be in so many moments this week, but take a few moments to just take it, all this life in here, because it's so different to the life that we lead most of the year as cyclists. And this is a bit more real, and I think it's important to kind of break out from your bubble, for use of a better 2020 keyword, and see everything else that's going on.
Was it true that you won a prize to ride with Team Sky back in 2010? They were carrying on about that on the Eurosport a lot. Is it true? And can you weave that tale for us?
Yeah, it was. Again, it's pretty long ago. But from what I remember, it would have been 2010, I think. So I was working Saturdays in a bike shop at the time. I was just started racing, but not much, because I was doing that job, and I was just kind of getting into the sport, really. And yeah, obviously the team launched. I think it's weird because I never enter competitions, but I guess I must have, for whatever reason, entered it. And because it was all kind of shrouded in secrecy, but it was in a public place. There was like a text message on the morning of the event, if you were selected, I guess, or not, and with a location. And so I can remember it was on, like a little tiny Sony Ericsson phone that you just texted and called on. And I got it that morning, and I should have been going to school at 8:30. But I instead went on my bike into central London. It was around Horse Guards Parade where it started, which is like in front of Buckingham Palace, essentially, near enough. And then we did laps of the mall, the St James's Park, I think it's called. Now, but especially even more so when I was a kid, that was like a whole nother world that we never really went to, and even though it's a few kilometers down the road, I don't know, we never really went into that part of central London, especially. So yeah, it was a cool day out. I remember I left like 10 minutes before the end because I was so cold. It was like a freezing January morning, and I'd imagine in my excitement, I probably, and also just inexperience, didn't have enough clothes on. And I had to stop at my place where I was working on the way home to to warm up for half an hour. But yeah, it's just one of those like moments, isn't it? Where, you know, I think we all had them when we were growing up, where you meet someone or you do something like that, and it just keeps you believing that you should kind of keep pursuing that dream or whatever it is that you're doing. And I'd imagine that was, looking back, probably pretty significant for me, just to ride my bike next to professionals and see them in the flesh. Yeah, I think, you know, all these little things help along the way of just kind of plugging away years and years at something you really enjoying, but it's not always necessarily the easiest thing to pursue.
Yeah. In the interest of time, we'll jump forward to the Giro this year. There's so much in between, obviously, that 2010 ride and getting to this point. But you're a Grand Tour winner, mate. Like, has it sunk in yet? Like, that's massive, isn't it? Did you ever think that you were going to win a Grand Tour? Was it a goal of yours?
I think it would be pretty outlandish and arrogant to me for me to have sat around saying, "Oh, I'm gonna win a Grand Tour," with the results that I've had until now. I certainly knew that was the racing that suits me best. I think, like second, third week of
Yeah.
those kind of events. I learned that already last year in the Vuelta, and even to some degree in my first Vuelta. Even though, you know, there wasn't really any like performances that anyone would have noticed. I think I just kind of felt in myself that I was still riding pretty well, kind of into the last few days of the race, and even though I was missing some very, very big pieces to the puzzle in terms of it being a really good performance, I think I still kind of believed that, you know, that was what suited me best in cycling. Obviously, this is a whole nother step forward, so yeah, it's pretty unexpected, to be fair.
When did you think that you were like really in with a sniff? Was it after that TT put in a really
The first
solid
TT.
performance? No, the one on stage 14.
Sorry, yeah, I've almost forgotten about that. Yeah, that was the one I meant.
The one the
Yeah,
one in
yeah.
Sicily.
It was not.
What happened
It
there?
was. There wasn't a nice day, to be fair, all round. Just even in the warm up, we saw blokes crashing. There was
Yeah.
barriers flying into the road from this crazy wind, and then sat on the bus for a few hours, watched a whole heap of more guys crash, and watched Rowan have to race on his base bar near enough. He went off in like the worst time possible. Our, whatever it is, I don't know, 20-ton team bus was shaking side to side whilst Rowan was racing. So it was a weird day, that one. In terms of your question, I think I never really thought about it, to be honest. It was just a case of like keep focusing on that day, and also keeping the momentum that we kind of started building up from that day that I followed Lucas's attack in the rain.
Yeah.
And I think from that day forward, really, it just kind of snowballed would be too aggressive a term. It just kind of trickled in the right direction, really. Kept chipping away, and I mean, you know, until the did a good TT, yeah. But until the Stelvio stage, it was, you know, miles away, really. I think I was still 3 minutes down on GC, and that was when it all changed. So there was definitely a lot of moments where we rescued a good result, or, you know, we kept in the game. But at the same time, I think it was never like, oh, you know, we're up ski here. It was just, oh, okay, we try top 10, or even we didn't even really speak in those terms to a lot of the time. And then obviously, yeah, then it kind of was like, oh, okay, maybe we're a bit better than top 10. And then Stelvio obviously changed everything. So yeah, thanks to old mate Rowan Dennis, really.
Yeah, he was climbing like a madman, wasn't he, in those last couple of days? How was
He
the
was amazing.
the finale to Sestriere with you and Jai, just in a big ding dong battle? It was kind of like a Contador and Schleck of 2009.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was like super aware that even though I felt really good. I just didn't need to take any risks whatsoever. That was the first time in the race really where we actually had a real strong tactical card to play, I think. Like in the opposite sense, kind of the last few Ks of Stelvio and the rest of that day, I was pretty aware that Jai, I felt like Jai had a very good card to play, kind of as he did to some degree. I think on the final Sestriere, I was really knew that basically I wanted to take those bonus seconds at the finish. And having seen the final the lap before, was kind of unsure whether it was a little bit of a risk to hit out before the sprint, just because the harder part of the climb was a bit before. You kind of saw even that he kind of attacked the last time, maybe over a K to go, and then kind of waited. And yeah, that was kind of similar to what I felt about that climb. So yeah, then obviously how close we were on GC, it was like really a case of just those bonus seconds could be the difference, and that was kind of what went through my head really when I was sprinting. That this could be the Giro in this sprint, but at the same time, knowing that the TT the next day would maybe be a bit more favourable to me, or at least that was the hope anyway.
Yeah. So I want to talk quickly. The last question before we let you go. Brad Wiggins, obviously, he was super emotional on the commentary on Eurosport. Have you got a really good relationship with Brad, and what was he saying to you before the TT? Obviously, he's a TT king and would have had some good advice for you heading into that last TT.
Yeah, I mean, I think someone that's always been a massive inspiration to me, like we were talking about, growing up in 2000, getting into cycling 2009, 10, 11, 12, when he was really ripping up the script in terms of what British riders could expect of themselves or aspire to. I think I'm not wrong in saying that his finish at the 2009 tour was the best ever for a Brit, when he finished fourth. And yeah, since then, obviously, there's been quite a lot of Grand Tour success from Yatesy and G and Froome. So yeah, it's always special to speak to someone like that who you've grown up watching on TV. And he had some really good advice. He just said, like don't get pulled out your zone, essentially, and just before the TT, all your teammates are gonna want to give you advice because they really care about you, and of course they want you to do well, but just focus on your own race and your own performance, which is what's always been drilled into us since I first started in British cycling, really. Controlling the controllables, as it can be so unromantically put, but it was a great course for that because it was not many corners, nothing tricky corners wise, and yeah, 2 or 3 very, very long straights to basically focus on putting as much power down as you can, and yeah, losing time hand over fist to Pipo Ganna, but at the same time trying to go as quick as possible.
He's a madman, isn't he?
He's
so strong.
I think he's unbelievable talent, and especially looking back at the Giro, we as a team, I think as a group, we owe him so much really for what he did on stage 5, because it was so elating and amazing what he'd done, and the feeling was so contrasting to how it had been the 2 days before when we got back on the bus that stage, that I think Filippo, not necessarily on purpose, but afforded us the chance to really start afresh in that race. And obviously, yeah, everything that came after that was a lot to do with his legs again, but also to do with the kind of renewed spirit and excitement for the race that he'd given us that day, I think, because it was pretty. I mean, certainly I was in the GC group behind, and there was one point late on in the climb where his time gap was going up, and I could see a few GC riders going pretty hard, and I was just sat there thinking, this is bonkers. And yeah, what a stage! The weather and how long it was made it even more more impressive, really. So I think that really set the mood and the tone for the rest of the race, really.
Just one more.
Got
Pink
me.
jersey, sitting in the Duomo of Milan in the pink jersey. What was it like? Did it hit you pretty hard, or were you just enjoying it, like just soaking it all up?
I mean, it was a little bit, different. There was no crowds or anything in front of the podium, so that was it was different. None of my family were there. They're all here in London, so it's probably not. I think in some ways, if you ever imagine those big successes, maybe a bit less for you guys from Oz, but certainly for us, I think with a grand tour, when you have so much kind of warning about it coming in terms of 3 weeks. Obviously, I didn't in the Giro, but you kind of envisage maybe at least one of them being there, my brother or something. But in the end, they weren't, and it just was what it was. My missus was there, which was obviously super nice. She'd come in the night before, but I hadn't seen her for a month, so that was pretty cool. And yeah, I don't know. It just was what it was. It was a bit bonkers, really, especially to put the jersey on for the first time after the race and all that kind of thing it was cool. I quite liked it. We came in in the last minutes in extra time and nicked it on that last stage. So yeah, I mean, also I think should say chapeau to Jai. I'm super happy for him, and it was a shame that he was the bloke that was on the on the receiving end of us taking that jersey that day, because he's a super good guy. But I'm also super happy for him, because I think both of us would have, if I'd been offered second place before the Giro, I probably would have signed the contract there and then. So,
snatched at it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I think I chatted a little bit in the last couple of days, and I hope he's also enjoying it, because I think speaking to a lot of people here in the UK, they loved the race. And the thing that's made me so most happy, really, since I've got home, is like people saying how much they enjoyed the race and how much fun it was. Because that's not really normal from my experience. Of course, people enjoy cycling, but non-cycling fans saying that they watched it every day for a week and it was so much fun, and even journalists saying it and stuff, is pretty unusual from my experience. So that's been super nice. I think everything that's happened this year is led to this point, and here we are.
Congrats again, mate, on the win, and really appreciate you slipping us into your super tight schedule. So
all right, mate.
All the best for the future, and really appreciate you coming on, mate.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks.
Cheers. Thanks.